The turquoise waters of the South China Sea shimmer under the morning sun, painting a picture of serenity and endless possibility. From above, the ocean appears calm, its surface glinting with light, as if nothing could disturb its peace. But for the Filipino fishermen aboard the Maria Clara, this beauty is deceptive, a fragile mask that hides the ever-present shadow of danger. Each day they set out before dawn, driven by hope and necessity, knowing that the sea they call home is no longer just a source of life but a place of uncertainty. Their small wooden boat bobs near the jagged rocks of Scarborough Shoal, a place that once teemed with fish, where generations of families made their living. Now, it has become a flashpoint in a tense standoff, its waters watched and contested. Older fishermen remember when these waters were open and free, when the only challenge was the weather or the size of the catch. Today, those memories feel distant, replaced by anxiety and caution. Now, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel looms on the horizon, patrolling with an air of authority. Its presence is unmistakable, a constant reminder that these traditional fishing grounds have been transformed into forbidden territory, watched by powerful eyes. The fishermen's nets come up empty more often than not. Each cast is a gamble, and every fish caught feels like a small victory. Their presence here in these contested waters is an act of quiet defiance, a refusal to surrender their way of life. Every approach by the Coast Guard is met with blaring horns and aggressive maneuvers. The loudspeakers crackle with warnings, and the fishermen are forced to weigh their safety against their need to provide for their families. It's a daily reminder of their vulnerability and the risks they must take just to survive. Scarborough Shoal, or Bajo de Masinloc, is more than a territorial claim for the Philippines. For these fishermen, it's a lifeline, a source of food, income, and identity. But that lifeline is now fraying, threatened by forces far beyond their control. The Chinese presence here enforces Beijing's sweeping claims, overlapping with the rights and livelihoods of several nations. The waters are crowded not just with fish, but with the ambitions of powerful states, each asserting their own vision of control. These fishermen are caught in the middle of a geopolitical struggle, their futures uncertain, their livelihoods hanging in the balance. For them, every journey to Scarborough Shoal is a test of courage, resilience, and hope against overwhelming odds. In September 2025, China made headlines by unveiling ambitious plans to establish a massive nature reserve at Scarborough Shoal, a tiny but strategically vital reef in the South China Sea. The announcement was presented as a bold step toward environmental protection, with Chinese officials touting the reserve as a model of ecological stewardship and a commitment to preserving marine biodiversity in the region. At official press conferences, Chinese leaders described the move as a necessary response to overfishing and environmental degradation, framing it as a responsible act to safeguard the future of the sea's fragile ecosystems. But for the Philippines, the announcement was met with deep suspicion and concern. To many Filipinos, this so-called conservation effort is a thinly veiled assertion of sovereignty over waters that lie well within the Philippines' internationally recognized Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. For decades, Filipino fishermen have relied on these waters for their livelihoods, and the shoal itself is a symbol of national pride and territorial rights. By proposing to regulate fishing, scientific research, and even access to the area, China is acting as if it owns the shoal outright, using the language of conservation as a tool to legitimize its control. Chinese maritime patrols and surveillance vessels have already increased their presence, enforcing new rules and turning away those who challenge their authority. This plan is widely seen as a classic gray zone tactic, an approach that falls short of open conflict, but steadily shifts the balance of power. By normalizing Chinese authority through environmental regulations, Beijing is quietly redrawing boundaries without firing a single shot. For Filipino fishermen, the consequences are immediate and personal. Establishing a reserve could mean being permanently expelled from traditional fishing grounds, threatening their way of life and the food security of entire coastal communities. The new restrictions would not only impact Filipinos, but also other nations whose fishing fleets operate in these contested waters. All of this is being justified under the guise of protecting nature, making it difficult for critics to push back without appearing anti-environment. For Manila, the move sets a dangerous precedent, one that could allow China to gradually expand its control, one protected area at a time, and reshape the maritime map of the region to its advantage. The stakes here go far beyond fish and coral. At risk is the future of regional sovereignty, the livelihoods of thousands, and the delicate balance of power in one of the world's most contested seas. Manila and Washington responded immediately, signaling to the world that they would not stand by in the face of China's latest move. The announcement of a new Chinese nature reserve in disputed waters was met with swift and coordinated action from both governments, underscoring the seriousness with which they viewed the challenge to Philippine sovereignty. Philippine officials denounced China's declaration, calling it a direct attack on their territorial rights and a violation of international law. In Manila, protests erupted as citizens voiced their outrage, while the Coast Guard increased patrols in the contested waters, determined to assert the country's claims. The government wasted no time, filing a formal diplomatic protest. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. addressed the nation, vowing not to yield 1 square inch of Philippine territory. His words resonated with a population that has grown increasingly wary of Chinese encroachment, and his administration's actions sent a clear message of defiance. The United States quickly threw its weight behind Manila, issuing a strong condemnation of China's move. U.S. officials described the declaration as destabilizing and coercive, warning that such actions threaten not only the Philippines but the broader stability of the region. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Ambassador Mary Kay Carlson reaffirmed America's unwavering commitment to its treaty ally. They emphasized that the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty remains ironclad, and that any attack on Philippine forces in the South China Sea would trigger a response. The presence of U.S. naval forces in the region underscored this commitment. Joint patrols with Philippine vessels sent a powerful signal to Beijing and reassured Filipinos that they were not alone. International media coverage amplified the dispute, drawing global attention to the escalating tensions. By framing China's actions as a threat to international law and the rules-based order, the U.S. sought to rally support from allies and partners. At the United Nations and in meetings with ASEAN leaders, American officials called for a united front to resist Beijing's expansionism and defend the principles that govern the world's oceans. Both the Philippines and the U.S. insisted that disputes in the South China Sea must be resolved peacefully, through dialogue and adherence to international law, not through unilateral declarations or the use of force. They urged China to return to the negotiating table and respect the legal processes established by the international community. Allowing China's plan to stand, they warned, would undermine the legal framework that has helped maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific for decades. The stakes are high. Trillions of dollars in trade pass through these waters each year, and the outcome will shape the region's future. Ultimately, the fight is about far more than one shoal. It's about defending the future of maritime governance, upholding the rule of law, and ensuring that the Indo-Pacific remains open, stable, and free for generations to come. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines, rejecting China's sweeping claims and affirming Filipino fishing rights at Scarborough Shoal. China dismissed the ruling, refused to participate, and has since ignored its findings. Chinese vessels continue to block Filipino fishermen, defying international law. For Manila and Washington, the tribunal's decision is the foundation of their legal and moral stance. China's proposed nature reserve is seen as a blatant violation of the ruling. The dispute is now a test of whether international law can restrain powerful nations. Tensions have escalated from diplomatic protests to dangerous confrontations at sea. In September 2025, Chinese Coast Guard vessels used water cannons against a Philippine patrol, injuring crew and damaging boats. U.S. warships have conducted freedom of navigation operations nearby, signaling American resolve. Recent months have seen near collisions, aggressive maneuvers, and even reports of casualties. These incidents highlight the risk of miscalculation. One wrong move could spark a major crisis. In response, the Philippines, U.S., and Japan held joint maritime exercises, demonstrating solidarity and readiness. The drills send a clear message: Allied forces are prepared to defend international law. These are not just naval games, they're real-world deterrents. The stakes are life and death on the high seas. Beijing remains defiant, issuing stern warnings to Manila and Washington. China insists its actions are lawful defense of sovereign territory, accusing the Philippines of provocation and the U.S. of meddling. Official statements frame water cannon attacks and blockades as restrained and professional. China's narrative relies on historical claims, despite the 2016 tribunal's rejection of such arguments. By invoking history, Beijing seeks to legitimize its control and pressure Manila into bilateral talks. The goal: isolate the Philippines and weaken the US-led alliance. For China, this is a regional matter, one it wants to settle on its own terms. President Marcos Jr. has made defending Philippine maritime rights a national priority. His administration's assertive transparency strategy documents and publicizes Chinese actions, countering Beijing's narrative. Manila swiftly protested the Nature Reserve Plan, demanding China respect international law and the 2016 ruling. The Philippines is strengthening alliances with the US, Japan, and Australia, and raising the issue in global forums. This bold stance has increased tensions but also rallied international support. For many Filipinos, it's a welcome defense of sovereignty after years of deference. The government is betting that global pressure will force China to reconsider the stakes: national pride, security, and the rule of law. And for Filipino fishermen, Scarborough Shoal is not a chess piece, it's survival. Since China's takeover in 2012, access has become dangerous and uncertain. Harassment, confiscated catches, and damaged boats are now routine. The proposed nature reserve threatens to ban them permanently, deepening poverty in coastal communities. Many have been forced to fish in depleted waters or abandon the sea altogether. The loss ripples through local economies, devastating families and businesses. These fishermen have become reluctant activists, their plight symbolizing the fight for sovereignty. Their stories, amplified by Manila, put a human face on the conflict. The battle for the South China Sea is about more than territory. It's about the right to earn a living. Scarborough Shoal is a global flashpoint. The South China Sea carries a third of all maritime trade. Any conflict here would disrupt the world economy. The dispute challenges the rules-based order, testing whether international law can restrain power. If China's actions go unchecked, it sets a precedent for other revisionist powers. The risk of military miscalculation is real. The US-Philippines Defense Treaty could draw in nuclear powers. The world watches, hoping restraint prevails. For the Philippines, it's a fight for identity and survival. For the world, it's a test of whether rules or raw power will shape the future.